I like anime. If that surprises you, no it doesn't. But anyways, I recently hit 500 subscribers, and Zuri recommended I make an anime ranking video as a special. I made a post asking what people wanted. Since I've watched a lot of anime in my day, I have plenty to work with. P.S. If I don't go very deep into a story synopsis of it, it's because the story includes something that would be regarded as a spoiler early on. So that's why I chose not to go the most in-depth with some. In other words, this video is mostly spoiler-free. But I'll tell you when actual major spoilers pop up that are in the video, because sometimes they're inevitable to talk about, but yeah. I'll also be talking about just the anime themselves in my reviews, so without any further ado, welcome to Axe Top 10 Favorite Anime. At number 10, we have a classic dark seinen that many in the older anime community are familiar with, Hellsing. But in this case, specifically Hellsing Ultimate, as it's the adaptation that follows the manga closer and is the one that I've actually completed. Hellsing Ultimate is one thing for sure. Not for kids. It follows the Hellsing organization, which fights against a new wave of vampires that have been ravaging England. The three most important characters are Alucard, a vampire himself who is known for, of all things, using a gun as his main weapon, Seras Victoria, police officer usually nicknamed Police Girl, and then there's Integra Hellsing, a girl boss. I mean, she's the boss of Alucard and Seras, known for her stern and cold demeanor and overall cold vibes. What I like about Hellsing is that it doesn't just try to be dark for darkness' sake. It also does well at being a good story with captivating characters and overall intriguing vibes. Although I must say, it's a bit short and the plot doesn't really leave room for many more possibilities beyond what we see in the show. And also, if you are on the younger side of adolescence and want to watch it, I'd recommend putting it off for a little longer, as it's not family friendly in the slightest, and it could seriously disturb younger audiences. At number 9, we have a very famous girls' love / Yuri anime that delves into human emotion and relationships called Bloom Into You. In Bloom Into You, the main character is this first-year high schooler named Yu Koito. For all her life, she hasn't been able to feel romantic attraction towards anyone. Eventually, she talks with one of her classmates, Toko Nanami, who has experienced similar things, about how she, Koito, has to reject a boy due to a lack of romantic feelings. Toko Nanami originally feels the same way about everyone who confesses to her, but after hearing what Yu Koito has to say about, not being able to feel attraction, she begins to develop feelings for Koito. Bloom Into You is great because its depiction of people is incredibly real. It hardly feels like they're fictional characters that are meant to advance the plot, but instead they are the plot. Every moment that Yu Koito and Toko Nanami spend together feels real, it feels emotional, and yet, the story knows how to lighten the mood. That's not to say it's without problems. My problems with Bloom Into You is that it's too short, being only one season of 12 episodes, which isn't enough to cover the full manga story. And add to that, the character designs in the show aren't very memorable, and it can be easy to get some characters confused. But overall, it is a very good anime and I totally recommend it. At number 8, we have Death Note. You know what Death Note is. It tells the story of Light Yagami and the Death Note itself. A notebook that you can kill people with by thinking about their face and writing their name in it. Death Note is a very unique shonen anime. It's unique because it mostly feels like a seinen, with its main theme being about how power corrupts, in that when you stop seeing people as human, you forfeit your own humanity. It is a beautiful mixture of 2000s nostalgia, dark urban fantasy, murder mystery, and detective show. My biggest issue with Death Note is how confusing it can be at times, making it hard to keep track of what's going on. But overall, it's a wonderful anime that always keeps you on your toes. The first time you watch it, you wonder what's going to happen. The second time you watch it, you're wondering what's going to happen because you don't remember. The third time you watch it, you know what's going to happen. Yet the suspense remains. Number 7. One Piece. One Piece is the best out of the shonen big three, hands down. One Piece kicks off its story immediately and keeps a good pace for a good portion of the story. But many people don't know what it's about. So let me explain. One Piece is about a stretchy guy named Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy wants to become the king of the pirates. The former king of the pirates, Gol D. Roger, was executed, kicking off the Great Pirate Age, leading to many wanting to sail across a Grand Line, a giant belt of ocean and islands across the One Piece world that can really only be traversed in one direction. What's at the end of the Grand Line? Why, the One Piece, of course. The One Piece, which is the treasure of Gol D. Roger, it is widely accepted that whoever claims the One Piece will become the first new pirate king. And that is precisely what Luffy sets out to do. One Piece is a very fun and engaging anime with an exception for Thriller Bark, Fishman Island, and parts of Wano, as they drag on way too damn long. But it really encapsulates the feeling of adventure that many modern shonen anime seem to be missing. Add that to the shockingly small amounts of filler, and you get something really good. However, that's not to say One Piece doesn't have its flaws. My biggest gripes with the series is its pacing and the way women are drawn. With its pacing, it's rather good until the time skip. After the time skip, I found myself most bored with this series, as it felt like each episode moved at a snail's pace. And when it comes to women in the anime, they have grotesquely small waists and the same face shape, and overall it just gives me the ick. I'd say that the anime One Piece is still worth watching, especially during the earlier parts of the series. Number 6, a modern yet instant classic anime about a young boy who wants to be a great hero. My Hero Academia. MHA is a cut above the rest, with its futuristic atmosphere and its themes about disability, political corruption, and both wealth inequality and social outcasting, leading to violent and antisocial behavior. But that's not it. It even has transgender representation, with Tiger, a transmasculine, i.e. born with a female body, but male mind and transitions to get a more male body from the Wild Wild Pussycats, and also Magna from the League of Villains, who's explicitly a transgender woman. But we'll get back to her later. So back to MHA's story itself. It follows the story of Izuku Midoriya, who is born in the 20% of people who don't have a quirk. Quirk here just means superpower. Izuku Midoriya, commonly nicknamed Deku, wants to become a hero. But to be a hero, you need to have a quirk. So basically, it's an underdog story about how young Izuku struggles and fights to become a great hero. Overall, it's great, but I have some issues. One of the minor ones is with the character Magna, and also her unnamed friend. The biggest problem I have with these two is that they're the only transgender women in the show, which wouldn't be an issue if it weren't for the fact they're both non-passing, and rather extremely so. I can understand having a non-passing transgender character can be a good thing, as it can give representation to transgender individuals who are also non-passing. But the only trans women in the show are, depicted as not passing. That may give the impression to the audience that transgender women inherently look masculine. Yes, I'm aware fiction is separate from reality, but when it comes to depicting minority characters, it's imperative that minorities be depicted fairly and accurately. On a positive note, when it comes to these characters, however, they are both depicted in a very human light. Although Magna is a villain, Magna and her friend are clearly both still compassionate and can still feel all the emotions that people feel, instead of acting like cardboard cutouts. I don't think there's any issue with a villain that so happens to be trans, as we also get a trans character depicted as a hero. Tiger. My other complaint is that MHA is too short and takes place over too little of an in-universe time, and also too little of a real-life time, that it ends up not living up to what it could be. Skip to this time to avoid spoilers. I also feel that All For One was introduced as the main antagonist way too early. What do I mean by this? Let me explain. We kind of already knew that from early on. The League of Villains works under All For One, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But they are basically built up as the main evil organization. Outside of the movies, we don't really see many other groups. We don't see many groups other than the League of Villains, or groups that end up absorbed into the League of Villains or working with the League of Villains, that have their own motivations, goals, and ways of achieving said goals. It sort of feels like every enemy that is faced in the main series is simply in the League of Villains, or an extension of them, which leaves the story to only go in a few directions. It feels like there's only one true obstacle to overcome, and that's All For One. And if you want me to come up with an example of an anime that doesn't do this, we can look at Hunter x Hunter, which has many different antagonists. Hunter x Hunter's story feels like it can go in basically any direction because there isn't one ultimate source of evildoers. But back to MHA, I also feel that Villain Hunter Deku is much more fun in concept than in execution, as his moderate amount of angstiness goes away after simply arriving back on campus. Another thing, occasionally Deku's rage and anger, in the War and Villain Hunter arcs, is something that's built up as something that might be an issue or something that's really intense, but it's hardly ever followed through upon. If Deku is actually prone to that rage, then show it. Make him commit a less than heroic action that he has to learn from and cope with later on. Or change how the rage is depicted, because it keeps getting depicted as something dark, intense, and boiling, like Gon Freaks from Hunter x Hunter. I made a video comparing the two, you should watch it. But if the anger isn't dark and intense, as in, it's not something that Deku would do, then change it to a more righteous-seeming anger, a bright anger, more similar to the stereotypical heroic shonen protagonists type anger. If he's going to have a darker anger, then lean into it, and show how it can negatively impact him more than what we see in the show. Make him disregard his morals if his anger is dark. Or if he's too heroic for that, then depict his anger in a more righteous light, like how Jonathan Joestar from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is depicted. Although I did have a lot to criticize about My Hero Academia, it is still a great anime that I love. As a matter of fact, that's part of the reason I'm criticizing it as hard as I am. Overall, My Hero Academia is truly a great anime and is deserving of 6th place. And 2 entire pages of this script. Horikoshi certainly made something worth rewatching when he wrote MHA. Madoka Magica. Yes, that's how you say that. How do I talk about this anime without it being a spoiler? I'll just show you some images and this meme, and let's move on, because talking about this anime is a spoiler minefield. Oh wait, I can say one thing. Pink. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Number 4, it's the anime I'm most known for, the anime that I pull most images from, and the anime that I watched on YouTube in a legally dubious manner. Lucky Star! Lucky Star is a slice-of-life anime that is straight from the 2000s. Lucky Star is a short anime, being 24 episodes, but it's a total juggernaut of the anime community. It follows these 4 girls: Konata Izumi, main character, short, certified procrastinator, and CEO of everything anime, games, etc. Tsukasa Hiragi, she's kind but not very smart. Kagami Hiragi, Tsukasa's twin sister, she's a tsundere and decently smart. Okay, she's basically Rin Tosaka from Fate. And then there's Miyuki Takara, the one with pink hair, but she's also taller than the rest, smart, and a total airhead. No, those 2 do not conflict. Wanna know what these 4 do? What the main premise is? They hang out. There's not much of an overarching plot, and it's more of an anime to watch when you're lonely and you want to pretend to have friends. Come on, you're watching my channel after all. One criticism is that it's too short. This might be a little bit of a theme for this video. Another is that it could use a slightly higher dose of plot, but overall, it's my 4th favorite anime. What's this? It's the Honorable Mention Lightning Round! Let's start. These may not be in a specific order. Demon Slayer is a fun watch, but it's too short and it focuses too much on one villain, leading to a short story. It also feels generic at times and doesn't have the most unique story, however it is beautiful and it has wonderful characters that are easy to get obsessed with. Chainsaw Man is really good at putting a darker spin on shonen anime, but I have some similar criticisms for Chainsaw Man that I did with Demon Slayer. It's too short and it's carried most by characters, not a compelling story. Yet again, it's beautiful though, and it's refreshing to see a darker shonen anime. Dragon Ball is the junk food of all anime. It's very fun and its merchandise is very collectible. However, it always feels like whatever story there is just an excuse to make people fight each other. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a shonen anime. The current manga is actually seinen, but I'm talking about anime specifically here. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a very unique and good watch. Although, I think the fatalism aspect of it kind of ruins it for me. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, every aspect of reality is already predetermined, which kind of undermines all the effort that all the characters seem to put in throughout the show. It also takes me out of the immersion, reminds me that I'm watching something fictional and manufactured. Toriko is like the weirdest mix between Hunter x Hunter, One Piece, Dragon Ball, and a refrigerator. Yes, you heard me, a refrigerator. You see, the world's premise is that it's basically the same as Hunter x Hunter, but there aren't regular hunters, there are only gourmet hunters, and the entire world is food. The main character, Toriko, who has a pretty feminine name despite being a bulky, giant man, is a very famous gourmet hunter. He goes out into the world to eat stuff. And when he's with his chef friend Komatsu, he can basically tackle any edible challenge. It's fun, but there's a lot of filler. And overall, it's pretty forgettable. Now, time for the top 3. Dun 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 dun! The bronze medal goes to the Fate franchise. The Fate franchise, I chose the entire franchise because I am indecisive, is home to many series that you can binge. Its dark fantasy seinen vibes, along with its hot, I mean lovable characters, is something that I think about every day. The main stuff, which I consider to be Fate Zero, Fate Stay Night, and Fate Apocrypha, are all dark urban fantasy stories that admittedly can be a little hard to follow sometimes, but make up for it because it's damn awesome. So let me explain what goes on in Fate. Every now and then, a Holy Grail war starts, and the Holy Grail selects people. 7 people. These people summon a figure from history or mythology, and then have a battle royale to see who will get the wish from the Holy Grail. To criticize the franchise itself, it's way too disorganized and messy to the fact basically everything conflicts with everything else when it comes to what is canon or not. But other than that, it's amazing. The silver medal goes to Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter, both 1999 and 2011, may seem like typical shonen battle anime, but Hunter x Hunter is so much more than that. It seems cute at first, but it's not too long until you start seeing a darker side to the Hunter x Hunter world, and if you're observant enough, you will be able to pick up on the darker traits of the otherwise friendly Gon Freaks earlier in the series. However, this is not to say that Hunter x Hunter is all doom and gloom. It isn't. This is also a story about mainly two young boys, Gon Freaks and Killua Zoldyck, finding where they belong in the world, along with the implications that Killua may have a crush on Gon. But hey, there aren't just two main characters, there are four, and we call them the main four. The other two are Leorio Paradise and Kurapika of the Kurta clan. Just a funny side note, Leorio calls Kurapika Sunshine in a scene from the 1999 English dub. Also, Kurapika is pretty. When it comes to criticisms, I have a few. I feel the splitting of the main four sort of diminishes the feeling of wonder and adventure that the early part of this series had such a good grasp of. I also felt that the Greed Island arc felt sort of bland, and that Genthru is easily the most forgettable Hunter x Hunter antagonist. Sometimes I even forget he exists. Another criticism is that there feels like there's something missing in between the Greed Island and Chimera Ant arc. Personally, the Chimera Ant arc felt like too large of a jump between the story that Greed Island was leading up to and where the story actually went. I felt like there should have been another clue indicating how to find Jing, rather than Gon and Killua simply being sent to Kite. Speaking of Jing, the fact that he just randomly appeared in the election arc is a bit of a letdown in my opinion, as it's not really Gon finding Jing, it's Gon encountering Jing. Another less specific criticism is with the introduction of Nen. With the introduction of Nen, mysteries in Hunter x Hunter can be solved too easily from the audience's perspective. What do I mean by that? It just feels like any sort of question about something magical or mystical in the Hunter x Hunter world, you can just answer with, oh, it's a Nen ability. Although I brought up all these criticisms, Hunter x Hunter is still a near-perfect anime that you should watch. Oh, I forgot to mention, it also has a decently good amount of queer and queer-coded representation. Now finally, the gold medal. The best anime to have ever animated, drumroll please, Fruits Basket. Fruits Basket is truly a masterpiece. Fruits Basket is a shoujo romance drama anime where the main character, Todo Honda, meets and forms bonds with people of the Soma clan. Some of the Soma clan members are part of the Zodiac, and turn into their respective animal when hugged by a member of the opposite sex. Fruits Basket, you can expect adorable moments, hilarious moments, and really emotional moments that make you cry. Fruits Basket has some of the best depictions on how trauma can affect people that I've seen in anime. One of my criticisms is that it sometimes comes off as a bit queerbaity. Not much, just a smidge. Trust me, it's not bad enough to knock it down from first place. One of the examples is with Ritsu. I feel like Ritsu's character could have been handled better, specifically at the end. Ritsu is male, yet dresses feminine. Yes, I'm going to say his, because there isn't enough evidence for the idea of Ritsu being trans to be that convincing to me. Anyways, his character arc about learning to love himself and accept himself just wasn't followed through on. Because at the end of the Fruits Basket anime, Ritsu is seen with short hair and masculine clothes, and it just feels like there wasn't any payoff for the time he was on screen. It stopped short of Ritsu being able to dress how he wants, but still be confident in himself, and learn that he can dress feminine but still see himself as just as much of a worthwhile man. But what happened is that he started dressing more masculine and basically turned into a Yuki clone and fell in love with the woman that edits Shigure's novels. Another, slightly more minor, as this issue has less impact on the story, criticism is also about queerbaiting, is that there is not a single gay relationship that ended up forming in Fruits Basket. Although that complaint is more of a, that would have been cooler if that happened, and less of a, wow, that's a problem. But overall, Fruits Basket's story is genuinely the best I've ever seen, and is totally worth the read/watch. As a matter of fact, I'll say something extremely cheesy and cringy. Fruits Basket changed my life. Fruits Basket has allowed me to get a better understanding about things that have happened to me in my own life that have left a mark on me, and Fruits Basket has helped me heal and move on from that. It also made me cry. A lot. That's about all for today's video. Sorry if this took like a month to get out. The script is like 3.5 times longer than my usual script, so naturally I kept procrastinating and I was intimidated by making this video. But if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, have a wonderful day, and stay groovy, my fellow Ebinskis.